Hey Mathis, aren't you wearing the same clothes you wore in the last 2 unboxing videos? Yes, I am. And it is the same exact day. I just want to get them all unboxed and up on my shelf. I can't help it. I've been in this house for 4 months and I have it in my collection up there. So I'm very excited. So just bear with me. Hey, we got another box of PC games to unbox. So sit down, enjoy some nostalgia. This one's going to be a fun one. All right, let's get the boring stuff out of the way. Fallout 76. I bought this because I thought I'd at least get a physical version of it. Ah, joke's on me. It's digital. There's no physical game. So I own a Fallout 76 box. Cool. For some reason, and I don't know why, I own 2 copies of the Mists of Pandaria expansion, normal version, both opened. And then I just, I had to buy this when it came out. Diablo 3 box version. They're just boring boxes nowadays. They all look the same. They all open up. Blizzard has a very unique way about doing their thing anyway. Very pretty. Don't get me wrong. This is a very, very pretty gatefold, but there's just not enough special shit in here. This isn't enough. It's just not enough. I did a Judge Mathis on this game a long time ago. This is a prank game, more or less. And what I mean by that, it was made as a joke to kind of satire other games in its ilk, or video games in general at the time. And that is Wacky Funsters. I actually saw this game being played by Vinny Vinesauce years ago, and I was like, what the hell? I gotta try that. And I had to hunt this thing down, but a sealed copy, never opened, never played, was like $5 to give you an idea of how valuable this thing is. The game's terrible. Don't buy it. The mini games that are there to be a joke are bad. The humor is bad. The humor would have been bad even back then. It was just not funny, stupid, and somebody probably made a quick buck off of this thing, but it's a novelty. If you're all right, you know what? At $5, if you have a collection, it's a worthy novelty, okay? The next batch of games are fun ones, mostly for those who are familiar with Eidos or Square back then, because of how they shaped their boxes. The first one I'll just show off is Revenant, and this is what I'm talking about. This is the Trapezoid case. And these have a unique little story behind them, but they're not all that deep. Only a few companies did this, and the reason was, back then when you were buying shelf space at retail stores, being stuck up amongst all the other PC games, you all look the same. All the boxes were really hard to stick out. But if you shaped your box weird like this, then the retail stores could not properly place this on the shelf without it sticking out, not fitting, looking awkward. And so instead, they had to keep them up top on their shelves where people could see them more prominently displayed. And I'll tell you, at least it worked for me as a kid. Every time I'd go in like Babbage's or GameStop or any of the gaming stores back then, and you saw these things up top, your eye was drawn to them. Something made it look special. Like, why would they make a box like this and go crazy like that if the game wasn't good or special, right? Nowadays, you're just like, oh, marketing, of course. But back then, it was a really cool, unique way to kind of get your game to stick out. Revenant was basically a Diablo clone. So you kind of, top-down isometric action RPG with loot, spells, magic, and a neat little story. Don't remember too much about it. One day, I'll cover it again. I have a thing for this developer, not a good thing, but I have to play through all of his games one day. I've been talking about it for years. David Cage. And of course, his very first venture, Omicron the Nomad Soul, where it attempts to break the fourth wall in a weird way, and David Bowie is in it. And it's just an absolute fever trip of a dream. David Cage and his company might be going through the shit right now, and deservedly so. But even back then, David Cage was an absolute nightmare of a human in the mind. And the shit he came up with was absurd. It just unfortunately got worse and worse as time went along. This one hurts in my collection simply because I can't put it next to the rest of the games in the collection, and that's Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver. Soul Reaver was an action kind of puzzle platforming game that took place in the Blood Omen universe. Originally, the development story behind this game is fascinating, and if you go watch my video I did on it on Judge Mathis, I talk about it, but this wasn't supposed to be a game in this universe at all. Initially, it's supposed to be a weird mythological biblical kind of story where you were this kind of transient soul. It's weird. I don't want to try and break it all down for you. Needless to say, what it eventually became is priceless, because this game is great, the story is great, and it fits so neatly into that Blood Omen world. Sure, and forced them to kind of take the Kain character in a different direction than they were planning on, but what ended up coming from it was one of the most unique, magical stories in a grimdark universe that I can remember. super, super worth playing. And if you can manage the kind of ugliness of this game, even if I personally think the art style carries it a little bit of a ways, even nowadays, it's fun and it's really unique in its reality twisting mechanics. Check it out. Another absolute classic of a game, and that is just Thief: The Dark Project. A stealth game that really kicked off stealth games back then. There's so much about this that was really pushing the stealth genre. They truly were going, I guess the word I would use is for a stealth simulation. Things that used to not matter suddenly matters. The lights being on, being able to manipulate the light in the levels, sneaking behind people, knocking people out versus killing them, with a really cool, magical, grim, kind of mechanical steampunk world that involves the supernatural in a way I don't think anybody really expected at the time. And even today, if you've never played the game, it's kind of a neat surprise. And the main character is just kind of a normal thief that gets wrapped up in all this nonsense when really all he cares about is surviving day to day. It's a really great world, a really fun story, and the game has a ton of mods and patches now to smooth out some of its rougher, vanilla features. So if you don't like the vanilla game, there's a ton of mods out there to make this very, very playable today. Check out Thief, it's super good. Notable simply because of what it is and the timing, I guess, of me popping this thing out, seeing that there's a new popularity for this game as it got a remake recently. That's just Final Fantasy VII. I mean, I played the OG Final Fantasy VII when it launched on the PlayStation 1 and cried and loved and hated every second of it because I hated grinding back then. And when I got to the final boss, I was severely underleveled and I had to go grind to even beat it. But beside the point, Final Fantasy VII was the game for me that turned me on to JRPGs, or RPGs in general. I really hadn't played all that many because PC gaming was kind of hard for me back at that point in time, though I still loved my RTSs when I could get them. But I never played like the Baldur's Gate games or any of those old school kind of either text-based games or Ultima games. I just really hadn't played RPGs. Final Fantasy VII was my very first RPG, and it was the game that showed me stories could be told in these grand ways on this still burgeoning new medium, even though I didn't think about it like that as a kid. I just said video games can tell stories. That's cool. And while I didn't own the PC version, I own the PS1 version. The PC version just has a really cool box. And I remember back then was kind of hard to come across. Only one person that I knew who did a lot of PC gaming back then actually had it. I don't remember why. I just remember it being difficult to get. And I think it was difficult to get working. I think it was a really kind of buggy game when it launched, but this is off going like 13-year-old Mathis's memory, and I'm much older than that now, so take what I say with a grain of salt. And this is the last thing in this particular box, one of my prized possessions as a collection. It came from a fan who was moving and couldn't take it, and it is just a collection of really classic games, and that is the ID Anthology. They only made 1,000 of these, I believe, and the person who was moving just, he couldn't take it with him across. I think he was moving between countries. This came with a bunch of stuff in it, in particular, dog tags, a cool metal statue, some flyers and stuff. And the way that the games are delivered are in this really, really sick book called the Book of ID. And in it, you have all the games and little blurbs about them with art and just kind of facts and history. It is a really cool freaking collection of ID's games up to that point. And the only thing it's missing is the t-shirt that this thing would have came with. I've looked for it in the past. I'd love to get the t-shirt to complete the box. If anybody out there has it and is willing to maybe sell it or something, reach out to me. It would be sick. But even if not, it has everything else and it is in immaculate condition. Shout outs to the person who kept this. I promise, like I told you when you sent it to me, I'll be keeping this thing in pristine condition. I've kept to my word so far and I plan on keeping it to it moving forward. If you are into ID games, this is kind of a nice little rare treat to have as a fan of the company and their old school games, and as a fan of, limited rare productions of games that celebrate them in some fashion. I love it, and the box is super huge, and it's freaking metal as shit. And that's it. Boom, baby. That's all we got for that box. And I'm actually out of boxes now. So I'm going to go get these up on the shelf, though I think I'm just going to put most of them kind of lining the top. I got to have my mom ship me a few more boxes so I can keep getting my collection unpacked. But I've been having a really friggin' good time, and I hope you guys enjoy it as well. There's something about sharing just the passion for old games like this. It's really special to me, and these things mean a lot to me. And being able to share them with you means a lot to me. So anyway, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I love you. Dean loves you. The channel loves you. And more videos like this coming soon. Bye-bye.